This
for this
conference will now
evening.
be recorded.
Ah, Pastor Barry Easton says, "Oh, what reckless love!" Absolutely. And again, there's just a really powerful song that speaks to that. The overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I mean, that song had me in tears last year during a particularly difficult period. The reckless love of God. Such reckless love indeed. All right, so 30 days to greater self love. We are at day 2. On your screen, you will see the website, my website, www.teddyajones, primary means of contact, as well as email address, coaching@teddyajones.com. If at any point during the campaign you would like to send an email or have a further conversation, those would be your primary means of contact. So here we go again. Uh, Welcome. Just as we did last night, we are exploring material from the ebook that will be on the market at the end of the campaign, the 30 days. The ebook by the title 30 Days to Greater Self Love. Love yourself unconditionally and nurture your self worth by yours truly, Teddy A. Jones. And welcome on behalf of your best self. I am welcoming you on behalf of that version of you that I am seeking to help you to move towards, moving from where you currently are, moving to that preferred, ideal self, that which God made you to be, and that which you can and should be. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And especially if you're joining us for the first time this evening. Who am I? A little bit about myself. I spent some time last evening, won't go into as much detail. The replay of last evening is available where I went into that I am a primarily, for the purpose of these sessions, a recovered self-hater. I went through many years. In fact, I was 21 at the time when I had my breakthrough, when I broke free through the help of my mentor who came in and became a spiritual father and in many ways conveyed that which my biological father had not conveyed, helping me to understand God's love for me so that I could move past the self hate that had plagued my life over the years. And that manifested itself in an unusual way in that I was performing very well at A level, right through level of A's consistently, right through primary, secondary, and college level. Yet I did not believe that I was capable of greatness. So that for me, that which was my excellence was actually my mediocrity because I was capable of far greater, but did not believe it and never believed in myself because of the wound that I was living with, the emotional wound as a result of the absence of my father. Therefore, I had never been made to understand that I was good enough. The GE dilemma was present from that early age. I am a certified life coach, master NLP, neuro linguistic programming practitioner, life coach certified by the CTTA, and author and public theologian. All of those trainings and others, trained as a guidance counselor, minister of religion, all of those trainings and experiences, I consider them to be a divine conspiracy because now I am seeing how all of those are fitting together into the tapestry of excellence that God intended me to be so that I could fulfill my purpose on earth. And that purpose, as I now understand it, is to focus on helping persons build their dreams, water their visions, and have their ideas nurtured so that they can be all that they can be and should be, so that they become all that they can and should be, helping persons to make that vertical leap from mediocrity to legacy, just as I was able to do when I was flooded by the love of God. So that's a little bit about me, facilitator for this campaign, the 30 Days to Greater Self-Love. We ended last evening with the question, are you using the right criteria to measure your self-worth? Having started the final section where we proposed that before we look at debunking the cultural and the societal models that are used predominantly by persons to determine their self-worth and determine how much they should love themselves, before we look at these which are faulty, which are fraudulent, I proposed that we focus primarily and focus first on the authentic and making a proposal of where we should actually locate our sense of worth and what we should use to determine how much love we should accord to ourselves. And that we proposed is to be grounded and located in a clear understanding of the extent, the dimensions of God's love for us. Hence, as we indicated in the replay. So it is important, as we indicated, that we do this because having and utilizing the correct measuring stick makes a difference. It matters. For we often judge ourselves by the culture in which we live, and this can be a colossal mistake. Ideas matter, and ideas are an essential part of culture. And ideas can be significantly and fundamentally flawed. And we will be exploring and demonstrating how the prevailing ideas of how self-worth should be measured from our culture, how those are flawed. That is why I started out with grounding the campaign in a proposal that we focus on that which is authentic. So it's about Control, Alt, Delete. Control yourself, alter your thinking, and deleting negativity. Being in control of self, your emotions, and all that make you who you are. Altering your thinking, your beliefs, and deleting negativity. So we want to take some time this evening to debunk the wrong criteria. We focus on the authentic, on the real, the original, the real deal last evening. This evening we want to spend some time debunking some of the wrong criteria, looking at and debunking some of the wrong criteria that society and our culture throws up for us and that many persons use, and which leads to the self-limiting beliefs that we want to destroy so that we can be all that we can and should be. So we ended just towards the end last evening, and I indicated that I would begin right there this evening as we begin the process of debunking with this verse where we made the point that God's love for us is unchangeable. So let me bring it back to remind us of that verse because I want to pick up right from there. And so the verse says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine, nakedness or danger or sword? And it goes on to say that nothing can separate us from the love of God. So God's love for us is unchanging. It therefore means that contrary to how we tend to think, and this particular aspect of the debunking is more applicable for persons within the church community, because there is a particular theology that teaches to the contrary. And in addition to that, the very way which indicated that when our fathers fail to be there in the way that they ought to, it gives us a skewed perspective of God. And one of the things that was mentioned in the video is that very thing, that a father who is consistently judgmental and punitive and consistently shames us, what that communicates to us spiritually is the very same thing about God, that God exists to cast and hold judgment over us and to punish us and to make us ashamed. So on the basis of that verse, Romans 8:35, I want to start there. So God, to say to us that God does not love me less if I am facing troubles. Remember, we said last evening that God's love is unchangeable. There are many persons who walk around thinking the moment they begin to face troubles, they begin to assume and think that this means that God does not love me anymore, or that God loves me less somehow. God does not love me less if I am going through hardship. Again, there is that view, there is that faulty teaching and faulty theology that causes people to think and believe that if they are going through hardship, somehow it means that God does not love them anymore, or that God loves them less. God does not love me less if I am being persecuted. We don't have persecution in the West in the same way that persons in the Eastern Hemisphere do. But there are many things that happen to us, a family, a neighbor, a family, an employer, or some person who, as we say, takes it upon you, which may cause a person to feel as if they are being persecuted. And another expression of lack of self-love is that some persons go on to develop what is called delusions of persecution, where everything in life that happens to them, they think and feel that they are being persecuted. As we indicated last evening, that lack of self-love can progress to the point where we develop mental disorders, one of which is delusions of persecution, or the person is said to have developed a persecutionary complex. There is a spiritual aspect to it as well, that many persons feel that once some things begin to go wrong, and perhaps over a period of time or consistently, they feel that they are being persecuted, and it means that God does not love them any less. Martinez asks, is it a possibility God is testing me when I am going through hardships. It is absolutely a possibility, and it is certainly one of the things that the scriptures teach expressly, that God allows hardships to test us and to build character into us. The Epistle of James talks a lot about that, and Peter, the epistles of Peter as well talk about that. Wouldn't it be? Ah, okay. So God does not love me less when I am hungry. And we are not here, I'm not here talking about that it is 2 o'clock and your last meal was 8 a.m. It's 2 p.m. and your last meal was 8 a.m. so you're hungry. No, the verse said famine. So I'm talking here now about a persistent lack of food. Um, so God does not love me any less when I am in famine. And this is one of the things that the kind of theology that suggests that if you are facing difficulties, it means that you have fallen out of favor with God, where it does not measure up to reality. I think about the hundreds, thousands of persons in Somalia, for example, and in sub-Saharan Africa, and in other places, as near as Venezuela last year and the last 2 or so years, where as a result of political conflict and political violence, many persons, including Christians, including persons from the church, were going through famine. It is absolutely illogical to suggest that it meant that God loved these people less because they were when they were going through their famine. God does not love me less when I have no clothes. And here again, for some persons, having no clothes doesn't mean that they have no clothes, that they have nothing to wear. It becomes as frivolous as I need to go to some work event or I need to go to some entertainment event and I can't buy something new to wear. And they have a total meltdown and say, I have no clothes. And a person can begin to move from that reality to thinking and assuming that God loves them any less. And God does not love me any less when I am in mortal danger. So Paul mentions sword and danger. Speaking about mortal danger, death. When my life is under threat or death is approaching, it does not mean that God loves you any less when those things are happening. So I want us to get it clear. On the positive side, we proposed that God, the designer, loves us with an unchanging love. This evening, we're looking at the faulty assumptions, the faulty assessment measures that persons use to determine their self love, how much love they should afford according to themselves. So, if we flip these, it is wrong, it would be wrong to think that it is only when your life is smooth and copacetic, you don't have any trouble, you don't have any hardship, you're not being persecuted, you have all the food you need and all the food you want to eat, including all the nice expensive stuff that you like to eat, and your closet is filled and you can go to the store at the drop of a hat and get a new suit of clothes and everything crisp. Nobody is threatening you. There is no illness. There is no diagnosis of some kind of lifestyle disease, that it is only when those conditions are met that you should love yourself. So we're starting there, right there this evening. Let's see. Romain says, but Rev, do you think the church and society facilitated the culture and concept of materialistic possession as an expression of love? You are spot on the money, Romain, and we're going to come to the matter of possessions in a moment. And I do agree that the church has contributed to that model of assessment of self-love that the society puts out there for our consumption. Excellent contribution. All right, so let's move on a little bit. How then, how do you determine your self-worth? And I want you to write it down. You may not be able to drill down deep enough into yourself now with the introspection, but I want you to write it down, because this will be part of your own reflection overnight and tomorrow and so on. Ask yourself and answer yourself, how do you determine your self-worth? Is it about how much money you have? Or is it about the fact that you can or can't fit into that pair of skinny jeans? Is it about having a great job and driving a Mercedes? I mean, you think about it, it's really an interesting question. And it is a question that many of us perhaps have never really stopped to think about. How do I determine my self-worth? So really think about it. You see, the truth is most of us just have a vague notion of whether or not we should love ourselves given our circumstances in life. It's something that we really hardly give much thought. But mind you, it is operating very much at the subconscious level. The majority of who we are, how we do, how we operate in life actually occurs at the subconscious level, which is part of how God designed us. But that in itself becomes a problem. For until we begin to live more at the conscious level and not at the subconscious, where at the subconscious, it is all the things that have been fed into us from childhood that become formed, where our psyche and our character and our temperament, where all of those things are formed. That is why there are some people who are adults and there are elements of their emotional makeup, elements of their psyche, elements of their temperament, their attitudes that are so difficult to adjust because these things are formed and almost cast from childhood, and they drive us at the subconscious level. And in order for change to occur, we have to learn to operate more from the conscious and less from the subconscious. So, as we explore, how really should we assess self-worth? A good thing to consider is how you think your child should measure their self-worth. See, I just said it, like I just said. These things are largely predominantly formed in our childhood period. The first 6 years of an individual's life are the most critical in determining their overall psyche, their overall character, their overall persona. So all of us here are adults and we are kind of looking backwards now, taking a backward look. So imagine, well, some of you may have actually have a young child. Some of you do not yet have a child. So what I'm asking you to reflect on now is how do you think you should your child should measure their self-worth, or you'd want them to measure their self-worth? So let me help you with that a little bit. Do you think a child should love themselves more or less if they were, and here are a couple scenarios to reflect on, if they were more wealthy or poor? So in other words, how should you assess your own self-worth? And in order to help you to answer that question, I'm suggesting that we think about, imagine you have a child, or you may actually have a child. Well, how would you want your child to form their self-worth? Do you think that a child should love themselves any more or less if they were wealthy or poor? Or do you think a child should love themselves more or less if they were more or less attractive than the average person? And here, of course, is where a whole heap of subjectivity comes in, because you guys not are you guys hearing me? One person says, okay, all right, great. Remember, if you're not hearing or not seeing, please let me know so that we can all be on the same page. Yeah, it is society itself that dictates to us what attract, or at least attempts to dictate to us. Thanks, Katie. To dictate to us what attractivity is. In Jamaica, it is brown skin, which for our international persons is light complexion, long hair, straight nose. For a female, tall, slim, or for some, these days, I gather that it is about being thick. Yeah, I hear that is thickness a thickness a bit. Yeah, thickers, thick like porridge, and all them something there. So whatever attractivity means, do you think it is okay for a child to love themselves more or less if they are more or less attractive than the average person? What about failure? Should they love themselves more or less if they have failed more times than they have been successful? Or if they have succeeded more times than they have failed? Should a child love themselves more or less on the basis of those factors? So just some little tips there to help you to answer that question for yourself. How do you determine your self-worth? All right. Would you consider any of these that we have just had, and I'm going to put them back up. Would you consider any of these to be a reason for a child to love themselves more or less? And what criteria would you use? All right, so let's give us some feedback quickly in the chat. I'm going to go back one screen. Will you consider any of these as appropriate for a child to use to determine whether they should love themselves more or less? And also, what criteria would you use? You can just use the chat. Just type something there in the chat.
No.
Are you there? Remember to keep the mics muted. Okay, a child's circumstance should not determine their self-worth. Thank you for that contribution there. Anybody else? Wealthy or poor, if the child is wealthy or poor, or if the child is more attractive than the average person, should the child love themselves more because they are more attractive than the average person? Or the child is less attractive than the average person, should they love themselves more or should they love themselves less? If the child has failed more times than they have been successful, should children, that's where we are, would you consider any of these to be a reason for a child to love themselves more or less? And also, what criteria would you use? All right. So let's continue a little bit then. Perhaps you're still mulling things over. So then, let's go on a little bit to look at society. It all depends on the value system that has been inculcated in the child. Now we're getting down to the meat of things. A child's appearance has nothing to do with how they should love themselves. All right. So remember, um, so then, if we are saying that a child's appearance has nothing to do with how they should love themselves, would we, by the same token, agree and accept that my appearance has nothing to do with whether I love myself or not? That's where I want. That's where this is intended to go. Remember, we're looking at ourselves, but we're using the analogy, not analogy. We're using a child and how we think a child should assess self-worth as a way of helping us to reflect critically on our own personal concept of self-worth. So very good then. So let's go on a little, push a little further ahead. Things that probably shouldn't determine your degree of self-worth. These are some of the things that are commonly used, but probably shouldn't. And I would go on to say it even stronger, that actually should not be used to determine our degree of self-love. First one, your education. And I know that this one is one that is very prevalent in the Caribbean society. The Caribbean society is very stratified where education is concerned. I have another comment here in the chat. Life is valuable, so a human should be appreciative of themselves. Absolutely, absolutely. Life is valuable, and its value is derived, as we said last evening. Its value is derived from its designer, God, who designed us and vested us with dignity by creating us in His image and likeness. A woman can have a beautiful face, body, or shape, but have a nasty attitude and hates herself. Another comment in the chat. Absolutely. And we're going to come to that in a moment as well. So, education. If a child decides to become a welder or a preschool teacher instead of going to college, would you consider them to have less worth? If you need to go to college to pursue your dreams, then go. If you don't, there's no reason to feel bad about not attending. For decades, pretty much since the start of the just as the Industrial Revolution got going for all of the 20th century and a large part of the 21st century. The change started occurring maybe in the last 15 or so years. But for all of the 20th century and the greater part thus far of the 21st century, a college education was considered to be non-negotiable for career and vocation, and by that same token, for one to be considered to have been a success. As a result of this, there is now a student loan burden globally, but primarily in the United States of America, a student loan debt burden in the value of trillions. And the expanse of technology in the postmodern era has created shifts in the job market that has pushed the gap, made the gap wider between a college education being enough to allow one to actually acquire a job than ever before. So that model has collapsed because of changes in society and changes in how careers are, yet there is still a significant section of the culture and the society that uses education as a means, as a yardstick of determining a person's worth and a person's self-love. And I'm certainly not knocking college education. I would be an absolute fool and hypocrite to do that. I have been a college educator for a number of years. I served in a college, but I have consistently been saying since 2009 that our education system is flawed in how it attempts to put everyone in the same mold. For we were shaped and gifted differently by God, and therefore how we pursue education ought not to be a single mold. So education, I am proposing, as important, as certainly important, but it is how one is educated, and education needs to be stripped of the status that it has been afforded by society and the way in which the society suggests that we use it as a yardstick to determine our self-worth. In the US Virgin Islands currently, there is an extremely lucrative vocation, I mentioned it here, welding. There is a significant shortage of qualified welders. And so the ones that are doing welding, they have work coming out of their ears. A person who chooses welding and goes to be trained as a welder and pursues a career as a welder, why should that person be made to feel that they are any less of a person than the person who chooses to go to med school to become a doctor? That is my point here. And you may have come across the analogy of the animals that went to school and all of them were being trained to fly. Obviously, all of them were going to be tested for graduation on their ability to fly. Obviously, the eagle would have aced the test. And obviously, the fish would have failed the test. And it wasn't until somebody realized that this model is wrong. you can't use a single method of assessment to assess all the animals because their physiology gives them different capabilities. The eagle would be totally useless in a swimming test, whereas the fish would certainly excel in a swimming test. But that's what our education system seems to want to do, to test and assess everyone using a very narrow set of parameters. All right, let me check the comments here again for a little bit. A woman, oh, let's see this one. Teaching them to love themselves from early, so when they go out, it doesn't matter what they face, they will not be moved because they already know the truth and value about themselves. Quite so, quite so. A woman or a man may not turn heads while walking down the streets, may know their self-worth and would be unbothered by what society may think of them. All right. Society deems trade school or a vocational trade as mediocre because it is not a BA or master or PhD. Exactly. And that's precisely my point here. All right. And so you may be here on this campaign with us, and you have been belittling yourself. You have not been loving yourself because you didn't finish high school or you never went to college. Now, if your pathway includes that, oh wow, okay, not sure what's happened here. Okay, all right, we'll have a challenge on the next slides, but I'll work through that. We'll get that sorted out. Right. So if your child decides to become a welder or a preschool teacher, oh no, so we did that already. All right. So education, that is not a good measure of self-worth. Number two, your body shape or attractiveness. While your diet and exercise, my apologies for the the size of the font on the screen. Technology does its own thing. Everything was large prior to the presentation, so my apologies. I'm not sure what's happening here. While your diet and exercise routine have a great effect on how you look, much of your appearance is out of your hands. For example, the color of your eyes, your height, and your general body shape are determined by your genes. I am a Jones from my mother's side, and the Jones family is marked, distinguished by a very large, sprawling, spreading nose. I did not choose the shape of my nose. Why should I therefore dislike myself because of the shape of my nose? So the shape of your body, and even when it comes on to uh, keeping weight at a certain level, there are some persons who are biologically predisposed to having more weight. What it means is that it doesn't mean that they should, for very important health reasons, they need to keep the weight within a certain level. But such a person must come to an early understanding and acceptance that there is an element of their weight that they have no control over. If it is that there is a genetic predisposition to being overweight, they should be motivated to maintain it within a certain level for health reasons. but they should not allow that to determine how much they love themselves. The important thing here is to learn what we have control over and what we do not have control over. Because of this, the shape, body shape, and attractiveness being used as a factor, as a determining factor of self-worth and the degree of love that one should have accord to themselves. The body modification industry is $1 trillion industry. With all the tummy tucks and the bypass surgery and the enhancement here and the enhancement there and the cutting here and the pruning there. And people are in great consternation. Persons descend into depression even over body shape. Some persons are absolutely obsessed with body shape. And you may be familiar with anorexia nervosa and bulimia. Right? Two actual mental disorders that relate to how persons view their body shape. Some people literally starve themselves in the pursuit of a particular body shape. Some people spend hours viewing enviously the pictures of models on Instagram. What is that about? Somebody says, for me, it's big head as the character trait, the body shape trait that runs in the family. All right, and I know you love your big head. All right, so that's another one that a lot of people use, and it creates all kinds of self. And here is where there is a lot of self-loathing, not just self-dislike, but self-loathing with body shape. All right, and we're going to. I won't try to cover all of them. All right, I'm not sure why the sound is chipping out, in and out like that. Okay, so still on the matter of body shape, consider, here's something to think about. Consider your spouse, your child, a friend, or even a pet that you love. If their appearance took a turn for the worse, would you love them less? Another question to reflect on as you reflect on your own concept of what you use to determine your self-worth. So, body shape, body form, attractiveness. If you think that your body shape is a significant determining factor in how much you should love yourself, ask yourself the question, would you love your spouse, a child, a friend any less if their appearance took a turn, or was to take a turn for the worse? And that's a question you must answer for yourself, not for here. So, but it's a very, very serious question, because for some people, the foundation of their friendship, the foundation of their relationship, is based on physical attraction, physical appearance, and that is always the question that has to be contemplated. Since these things are so transient, What then? What happens if something, some incident, some accident, some medical matter were to significantly alter that person's physical appearance for the worse? What impact will that have on the regard, the love that you have for that person? Will it evaporate? Will it remain? Your answer to that question will help you to resolve your own reflection on whether you should love yourself less or more on the basis of your body shape and form and attraction. All right, so we've looked at two of them so far. Yeah, because there's number three. And the others are quite heavy. So I'm going to pause here with those two and invite feedback. So I'm going to allow you to open your mics at this point, or if you still prefer to use the chat. And let's have some interaction around what we have looked at so far. For just before we do that, so for the other, yeah, let's leave that for now. But let's take at this time question and answer feedback.
I'm just saying that if
yes.
if one just starts a program to enhance the look of their body, or I wouldn't say enhance, but maybe healthier in the process of wanting to be healthier, some actions will occur in the body, may make the body maybe a little slimmer or slender, and some will may become maybe even firmer, a little thicker. So that doesn't mean that there's no love. It's just that we want to feel healthy, and with the feeling of healthy becomes a different look, a different shape, and depends on the exercise that one does. Sometimes it brings a different shape of the body.
Right.
So would you say that it's a lack of love why you want to look a particular way? It's not really look as I just started, but you just want to maybe for health purpose. For health purposes.
Right. Yeah. So a person who embarks on that, the important point to note, as you're saying, is that one should not automatically assume that the person is doing this because they don't love themselves. The critical thing would be for the individual to assess their own motive, right? And it was Shakespeare who said, "To thine own self be true." If it is that you are telling yourself that you are doing this for health reasons, but deep down you know that it is not so much about health, it is because you want to have that particular shape or figure because you feel that this will give you more acceptability in society, or this will make you feel better about yourself. In terms of self-love, then you're not being true to yourself. So one needs to always assess their motive. Whatever we do in life, we need to be clear on our motive. Right? If having done that, if it is that the motive is truly about being healthy, then certainly. And it would also be true to say that an expression of loving ourselves would be that we would want to keep our bodies as healthy as possible. But it is also true that some may claim that they're doing it for health reasons, but deep down, the real reason is an underlying lack of acceptance of self. So the important thing would be, and that's something that only you, the individual, would be able to truly, truthfully answer. But excellent contribution there. Anyone else?
Good night.
Good night, Tommy.
What if you started the journey with the correct motive, but in during the journey you find yourself getting so, like, you get so caught up
Mm-hmm.
in in what the world or person they're seeing around you, so you tend to change not because of self-love but because you want to be accepted by persons.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened?
Right. And again, very, very good question there. And that can happen um, if one recognizes that that is the case. Then again, one would need to really spend some time with themselves. Um, Further ahead, not too far from now, maybe in another two 2 days or so, we're going to be talking about the principle of awareness, and we'll spend what we'll focus and then have you going through some little exercises for the entire day to build your awareness of yourself, what's happening in you, and what's driving you. I said, remember I said earlier on that most of us live from the subconscious zone and not from the conscious. It is only a person who makes an intentional effort to live in the conscious that will come to that realization, and in a way that will cause them to want to do something about it. So if you are practicing awareness, you are practicing regular self-assessment, introspection, spirit-led introspection, and solitude and that kind of thing. And you come to a point where you realize that, wait, I started this thing. This was about health in the beginning, but I am now being driven by motives of public acceptance and the applause of onlookers and that kind of thing. Then what do you do then? The individual should be at a point where they say, no, I need to fix this. And how do you fix it? You fix it by centering down, bringing your focus and attention back to what is most important. What is most important? The most important thing is the audience of one. The most important thing is living my life for God's applause, living my life for God's approval. So it's a mental shift. It's a soul shift that you will have to ensure that even that in your pursuit of this exercise and fitness and so on, now that you realize that it has become all about you and all about public applause and the ovation of the crowd and the society, and not about you living a healthy life, then you will have to look into yourself and identify what needs to be changed so that your attitude towards this pursuit is going to be in the right place. And what that looks like is going to be very different for each individual, because it is only as you really spend the time looking inwards that those answers will come. but the path towards fixing it has to be you sitting yourself down and really looking inwards so that you can find the answers to keep yourself grounded and focused, not on doing this for the wrong reasons. Thank you, Tammy. All right, so we have 6 minutes to go. We can take one more. But again, as you think of maybe responding, the takeaway from this evening is for you to take some time and really drill down with yourself and seek to answer the question, what do I use, or what have I been using to determine my self-worth, right? We spoke about education so far. We spoke about physical shape. And we hinted at a couple others when we mentioned some of the things that you want your child to use those as the basis. So I'm asking you to take some time and try to answer that question. You may want to, and it will be a very good idea to keep a journal as we go through these 30 days. So you may want to make some jottings as the answers come to you. All right, anyone else? All right, so I will indicate tomorrow before noon whether we are going to have a live session like this or whether I will do a video with I think I'd prefer, my preference would be to just finish the content like this with the live session. So we'll go through the other 4 of the societal models of assessing self-worth, because I really think all of us can benefit together like this when as we go through it, particularly for the pre-content of the material. So tomorrow is Wednesday. I know for sure Thursday evening we won't have a session like this, but so tomorrow is Wednesday. So set your
A hand is up.
a hand is Barry. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was looking at the chat section,
Yeah.
and there are some pointers there that I think you need to touch on. There are some.
Okay, which one in particular?
I saw 2 that you didn't mention. In the chat section.
All right, let me see.
Shed some light on those.
A woman, society.
Right, that one. Right.
So the one about society?
And then about the woman thing, a woman walking down the road.
Oh, okay. I actually did mention them. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did. But let me just repeat them again. Society deems trade school or a vocational trade as mediocre because it is not a BA or master's or PhD. Yeah, certainly we have that going on, and that really needs to be changed. I remember a couple of years ago while I was student affairs director at the seminary, that a team of persons visited Jamaica from New Zealand to recruit persons who were competent at fixing bicycles, because they have a horrendous traffic situation in the cities in New Zealand. So bicycles are very popular. So persons would park on the outskirts of the metropolis and park their vehicles in enclosed areas and board their bicycles and ride into the city. And so because they have so many bicycles, they were out of persons to fix bicycles. So they came to Jamaica looking for people who could fix bicycles, and they could not find many persons who were able to fix bicycles, and they were paying significantly large sums of money. And I thought to myself, well, look at that. Yeah. A bicycle repairman. Okay. Our society is still uh, organized in such a way where prestige and worth is still assigned to careers and vocations. But careers and vocations are neutral. You know, it is the individual that vests dignity in a career and not the other way around. Yeah, so we did have that one, and a woman or a man may not turn heads while walking down the street, but they may know their self-worth, and but they may know their self-worth and would be unbothered by what society may think of them. Again, we have to be true to ourselves, and if we are honest, if we are really honest, many of us will admit that when we leave our houses having dressed up, we feel a certain glow the more persons notice what we are wearing and comment on it. And there are persons who go home bawling because they put so much effort into dressing up and nobody noticed. Nobody commented on how they look. And then, of course, that is also a factor in why some people dress as skimpily as they do, because their self-worth is so tied up in comments and commendation and the attention that they can draw as a result of their, again, the physical attire and physical shape. All right, great. So we are going to pull the curtains down here for this evening. Thanks again. This has been day 2. Day 3, we will continue to look at some of the societal models, and but most importantly, remember that this is about you and your journey. So don't try to think about anybody else as we go through this. Keep thinking about yourself. And for this evening, it is for you to answer the question: how are you? How do you measure your self-worth and determine what amount of love, extent of love you ought to give yourself? Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again for being part of this. Remember, you can still invite others to join. The replays will be available, so even though they would have missed the live sessions, but certainly they can catch up with the replay and still get in on where we are. At the end of this week, might be a little late, but certainly this week you can still invite others to join us. But make sure that they register so that they will get the updates, and make sure you're plugged into the WhatsApp group. If you are not, please get in touch with me so that I can connect you with the WhatsApp group. Have a wonderful evening and continue to work on yourself, continue to strive for the best version of you that God made you to be. This is Coach TJ bidding you good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.